Alright everybody, so today's video is going to be my literal last video talking about the 2024 NAMM Show. And I guess we'll say, unfortunately, as the title of this video suggests, I feel as though the NAMM Show is slowly but surely dying, and sooner rather than later, it will no longer be a thing, and it certainly never will be what it once was. So before I start talking about the NAMM Show and giving you guys my thoughts and opinions on the show itself and the event itself, be sure to like this video, follow me on Spotify, and subscribe to this channel. I love creating for you all, and I love my channel, and I just love hanging out with you guys and interacting with you all down below in the comments. So yeah, man, if you guys want to leave a comment about my thoughts and opinions, be sure to do that as well, and I'll meet you down below in the comments. And with that all out of the way, do all the things I ask, and let's start talking, okay? So I went to the NAMM Show about 10 days ago now at the time of this video being uploaded. You guys know that if you guys have been following this channel, and I don't need to keep saying that, but here I am anyway. But I really truly wanted to go this year because I feel as though if I didn't go, I would miss it. You know what I'm saying? Because let's call it how it is. The NAMM Show and just all big giant public events and trade shows went away for a while because of the current events that have happened in the world, right? So I really made it a mission this year. It's like, all right, I have to go. I have to see it for myself, because if I put it off another year, I feel as though slowly but surely I'm going to lose more and more opportunities to do so, and the show inevitably will just, continue to get smaller and smaller. And having been there and talking to a lot of the OGs in this industry, in this hobby, everybody pretty much had the general consensus of, it's cool, meaning the show, it's cool, but, everybody always said this, but it's just not what it once was. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, of course, but just because somebody has an opinion doesn't mean it's a fact. However, nobody ever came up to me and said, yo, dude, NAMM's back, it's better than it ever was. Everybody always said, it's okay, or wow, it's a lot smaller than what it used to be, etc. There's a lot of these conversations happening on the floor with a lot of my peers and the people I look up to and anybody in between. I made a video not too long ago talking about my disappointments with the NAMM Show, and the main thing that everybody is, alluding to is just like companies aren't coming anymore. I mean, I thought of a couple other ones that I didn't mention in that video. You guys can go check it out. But also too, like brands like PRS and Schecter also didn't show up, in conjunction with Kiesel, Gibson, Fender, etc., Jackson, EVH, blah, 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 blah. Don't need to rehash that. So it just seems like it's just continuing to get smaller and smaller. Not only are a lot of companies choosing to not go to the show anymore, but in my opinion, kind of cross-referencing, we'll say, footage from years prior to present day, the booths are also getting smaller as well. Smaller booths equals a smaller footprint, literally, but also to a smaller sample size of the products. And the products that companies were bringing was more of a quality versus quantity. They weren't bringing all of their guitars, they were just bringing the ones that they wanted the public to see, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Dean Guitars is what I would call the epitome of this example. Back in the day when I was watching NAMM videos, when I was still in the army and stuff like that, I remember looking at the Dean booth and seeing the Dean girls and seeing this, how the Dean booth was the place to be at the NAMM Show, or certainly one of the places to be. Everybody would always talk about the Dean booth at the NAMM Show. Now, Dean is doing what I would say is definitely a more business savvy type of approach, which is a private kind of out of the way booth where it's like, these are all of our best guitars for the year, and it's a much more smaller footprint, and it's certainly not as elaborate and flamboyant as it once was. And that's not a diss or anything at all by any means. It's, like I said, it's kind of a smart thing, and it's more or less just a sign of the times, because like I keep saying, everything's just getting scaled down smaller and smaller, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have a big giant Dean booth with all the Dean girls and, all the artists just kind of shredding and doing their thing, because it's just it's not really cost effective and a sign of the times anymore. And because of the current events in the world where companies had to adapt and overcome the obstacles that were thrown at them, companies have been starting to do two things. One, be a content machine on social media, and two, hosting their own public events at their designated location, at their own headquarters. I went to one with Dean Guitars 2 times at the Dean AAA All Access something. I forget what the third the third A stood for, but I got my passes over there. Anyway, man, I went to a couple with Dean Guitars. Most recently, Kiesel had their own kind of Kiesel hangout. I forget the name of it, but they had their own show at the Kiesel headquarters, pretty much I think at the same exact weekend as the NAMM Show. Gibson has been doing it with their Gibson Garage and having dinners with Kirk Hammett. That may be an extreme expensive example, but still, long story short, a lot of companies are just hosting their own events. Also too, I forgot, Balaguer Guitars has had an open house a few times in the past years, down the road in Pennsylvania, and that's very close to my heart because I love alligator guitars, and two, it's literally in my backyard almost, you know what I'm saying? So it just makes a lot of sense from a business standpoint for companies to host their own events, and they don't have to ship out all their products and spend all that money going to California. And so where I personally see the NAMM show going in the immediate future is kind of almost like a precursor to what I saw, on the floor this year, and that's like, it's catering towards smaller booths and or smaller companies, like boutique companies. There were a lot of smaller companies there, and they were crushing it. Like, they had elaborate booths and they had great booths, but comparison to, say, like if Gibson were to show up or if Fender were to show up, like, you just can't compete with that. And that's okay. And I don't think companies should try to compete with the biggest brands all that much, because, like, if you have a core dedicated fan base and consumer base, it's kind of irrelevant to what anybody else is doing. So again, I feel as though the NAMM show will continue to be for the smaller companies, and therefore they'll be able to be the star of the show, and they'll be able to shine and show off their products because they're not competing with, the big giant companies that don't need to show up anyway. So for that, it's kind of a good thing for the smaller companies. But overall, everybody, I feel as though as technology continues to advance, as social media becomes more and more ingrained in our everyday lives, more so than it already is, I feel as though the public events of going to Southern California at the NAMM show are slowly going to fade, and that's a shame because, like, I'm glad that I went. I had a blast. I had the time of my life meeting all of my peers and meeting the people that I see on the internet on a daily basis. However, personally, I was a bit underwhelmed with what was there to look at because, like I said before, my demographic and what I'm interested in is like rock and metal guitar brands, and almost all the brands that I'm heavily interested in just weren't there. So for me, I got through the show and all the things that I was heavily interested in about a day and a half. Like I said before, Aristides crushed it, Balaguer crushed it, Ormsby crushed it, Ibanez, they were, not necessarily my favorite, but they did have a great booth. ESP was definitely the biggest booth and the most elaborate. They crushed it. Rev was there. That was awesome. Victory, love Victory. They had a nice small little booth, but what they had there was, an amazing layout and a beautiful setup, all the above. So all that encompassing, I got through all those brands in give or take a day and a half, and I was there for 4 days for the whole thing. And hindsight's 20/20, but I really didn't need to be there for the whole show. So everybody, all that encompassing, those are my thoughts and opinions on the NAMM show. I don't think it's dead per se, but I slowly think it is going to die and get smaller and smaller and become more of like a boutique kind of, like a boutique kind of smaller showcase, and not this big giant elaborate thing that once was, say, like 7-8 years ago. And last thing I'll say, man, I spread nothing but positivity on the internet and in real life, so this is kind of a downer of a subject, but like, for those of you guys who know my content and know what I stand for and what I believe in, you guys know exactly what I'm saying. Like, just because I have a bit of a negative approach on something or a negative belief on something doesn't mean I'm trying to bash or criticize. So I just want to make that apparent because, just the internet's going to internet, right? All right, everybody. So those are my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear from you guys down below in the comments. If you disagree with me, that's totally cool, man. Like, I love you all the same. And if you agree with me, let me know as well. I'm not right. I'm just, just talking about my experience at the NAMM show, okay? With that being said, everybody, be sure to like and subscribe and follow me on Spotify. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.